Hello, everyone. This is Joe Pusateri, and I am living the sober life. Today, I would like to talk about the 10th step. So, the 10th step is probably one of my favorite steps to talk about and to think about, and for a number of reasons. But just as a reminder, if we go back to the fourth step is making an inventory. Step 5 is talking about that inventory with somebody else, usually your sponsor. Step 6 and 7 is becoming ready to have God remove all of your defects of character, and then humbly asking God to take away those defects of character, those shortcomings, and those are the things that we discover when we do a proper fourth and fifth step, the things that we'd like to be rid of. Then step 8 is making a list of all the people we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9 is to make amends wherever possible to such people, except when to do so would injure them or others. And now I want to talk about step 10. Now, step 10 is a step that we work after we've gotten through the ninth step, obviously. But the point of saying that we get through the ninth step first, is that when we have gone through our past and we have gotten to the place where we have not fixed necessarily completely, but we've done our level best to keep our side of the street clean when it comes to our relationships and interactions with other people by making amends for our harms. In other words, when we take care of the past, then we're able to do something very special. And it might not sound very special, but I'll tell you what it is. And that special thing is to be in the present. So before we do a thorough eighth and ninth step, there is at least some part of us that is always living in the past. We're always thinking about the past. We're always regretting the past. We're always resentful at someone because of something that happened in the past. And our thoughts about things that happened before keep us limited from doing things in the present and in the future. And that might not be something that we think about day to day at a conscious level, like we know that that's what's going on. But usually, in my experience, that's what's going on. Before we do the ninth step, we are imprisoned by a lot of unresolved conflict in our past. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So when we do our best to resolve those conflicts and to begin the process, the lifelong process of making amends and repairing relationships, and usually when we do a ninth step, we will see a disproportionately high return on that investment of time and energy. So usually things get a lot better with friends and family members right off the bat, because usually by the time we get to our ninth step, we've been sober for several months. So this isn't just another empty promise. Plus, we go to people, and instead of just saying that I'm sorry, because they know how sorry we are in a lot of different ways. Number one, we're sorry because we're pathetic. Number two, we're sorry because we're genuinely remorseful, but unable to do anything about it. By the time we come around and make proper nine-step amends, I think people notice that something has changed. And people are usually more gracious than we give them credit for, or that we imagine them to be. So when we get to the ninth step, we're able to put a lot of the past behind us and not live there in our minds, and not allow through our minds the past to control our present and the future, which is a long, complicated way of saying we can now be right here, right now. Also, there is another place that isn't right here, right now, and that's the future. And I think that when we get through the ninth step, because we've done a lot of spiritual work, we're also able to stay out of the future, and we're able to not spend our life in fear of what's coming around the corner tomorrow or the next day or the next day. We really, truly learn to live one day at a time. And when we live one day at a time, we are able to access something that we might not have known really existed for us. And that is the real presence of our higher power. So some would say that, the presence of God is everywhere, that God is everywhere. But the caveat to that is we have to be in reality, because God does not exist in the fantasy lands that we make up in our mind. And the fantasy land of the past or the future is not a place that God can be, because it ain't real. But once we're in the right here, right now, we are able to access the power and the presence of God, which means that we're able to feel peace, strength, comfort, serenity. And it's a wonderful thing. And my experience with Getting through the ninth step is amazing. It's where the ninth step promises begin to come true, that I suddenly realize that God is doing for me that which I cannot do for myself. I suddenly have the fear of people and economic insecurity leave me. Things that used to baffle me are now suddenly clear. So anyway, step 10. Step 10 is a way that we stay in the right here, right now. So we've arrived to a certain place in some respects by going through the first 9 steps. And now that we're here, now that we're in this world of the spirit, as it's been called, the name of the game is to stay in the world of the spirit, to resist the temptation to go back in the past, to go into the future, to get off the beam, to begin making new resentments and so forth, which get us all out of sorts and could eventually lead us to a drink, which is what we don't want to do. So step 10 is a very, very practical way of staying in the present moment. And this is what the big book says. When, not if, when we are disturbed, when fear and resentment and those types of things crop up, we do 4 things. Number 1, we ask God to remove it. That's it. Ask God to remove it. And you'll be surprised how powerful that small action can be. Just to stop, bring attention to the fact that you're disturbed, humble yourself to ask God to take it away is very powerful. Number 2, we talk to somebody else about it. So that can be going to a meeting. It can be calling your sponsor. It can be calling somebody else in your network. But that way, it's like I'm disturbed, so I'm asking God to take it away, and I need to talk to somebody else about it. And when I talk to somebody else about it, it will relieve the pressure because now it's not just like packed into my mind and turning around and around and around, but I'm able to get it out and talk about it with somebody else. And that, I think, just in and of itself brings the pressure down. But it also gives us an opportunity to have some perspective. And the person we talk to might say, okay, like I can see how that would be disturbing, but did you think about it this way? Or did you think about it that way? Or did you put yourself in that person's shoes? Or whatever. And usually that's very, very helpful to go, oh, I didn't think about it like that. The third thing is to make amends promptly if necessary. So in the process of losing our temper and getting disturbed, as an example, if we have said something that we shouldn't have said or done something we shouldn't have done, at the earliest moment, we need to make amends for that because we do not want that to build up and build up and build up and cause a rift in the relationship. We want to go ahead and make amends for it right away. And the last thing, the fourth thing, is we turned our attention to helping somebody else. We turn our attention to being useful and to not being self-centered and thinking all about what I'm going through and how I'm feeling and so forth. And when we do those 4 things, my experience and the experience of a lot of people who have talked about the 10th step is that disturbance goes away and we get back into that world of the spirit and we get back to that place in the right here, right now, where we are connected to our Creator and we feel at right with the world. And that's where we want to be and that's where we want to stay. The last thing that I want to say about step 10 is that it says continue to take personal inventory. And that inventory, as the 10th step describes it, is that spot check inventory, meaning when I get disturbed and I stop and I see what's going on and I do those 4 things. Occasionally it's necessary, and some people make it a practice to do the 4th step over again on a yearly basis or every couple of years, 5 years, whatever. Some people don't do that. Some people do. But there is a difference in what they're talking about. So to continue to take inventory is not necessarily drawing out 4 columns and going through our resentments and our fears and our relationships and so forth. It's just doing those 4 things. That's how the 10th step is described. All right, that is enough about the 10th step. Remember that it's not if we get disturbed, it's when. The only way that we can stay on the beam is by correcting from when we fall off the beam. It is unreasonable and it is ridiculous to think that we will just magically stay perfect for the rest of our life. In fact, that is imperfection in and of itself because it assumes that we are, in a very arrogant way, that we are superhuman, that we're better than other people. I mean, part of living in the world of the spirit and being on the beam is having humility. And having humility means recognizing I'm going to make mistakes. So knowing that actually helps us stay on the beam, and knowing that we're going to fall off helps us stay on the beam. And then when we do fall off the beam, doing those 4 things is what helps us get back on. And we stay connected to our higher power. We stay away from a drink because we're not in that state of restlessness, irritability, and discontentment. and we're able to add to the stream of life rather than take away. All right, that's all I got. Hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. God bless. Love you all.